Muy buenas tardes, siendo las 18:59 horas, les saluda Cristian Cristóful, coordinador de lengua inglesa del Instituto Superior de Lenguas, en calidad de moderador. Se da inicio a la defensa virtual de Tesina, acorde a la resolución número 1576/2022, que fija fecha y hora de la Tesina. Un segundo, le voy a admitir a alguien que vino. No sé quién es. Un invitado.
Is it being
Sebastián
recorded
Cordero. Sí,
already?
seguimos. El título de la tesina es Challenges and Limitations in Teaching Students with Special Needs in an Inclusive Bilingual Classroom in a Private EFL School in Asunción, Paraguay, a cargo de la autora Laura María Paz Cordero Ferreira, de la carrera de Lengua Inglesa del Instituto Superior de Lenguas. El día de hoy, jueves 1 de diciembre del 2022, en calidad del presidente del tribunal examinador, nos acompaña la profesora María Belén Migliorisi Zelaya. Muy buenas tardes, profesora.
Buenas tardes a todos, un placer estar aquí hoy compartiendo y siendo partícipe de la defensa de la alumna María Paz Cordero. Qué manera de empezar diciembre. Acompañándome en la mesa están las profes Elena Núñez y las profes Carolina Ortiz. Adelante.
Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos.
Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos igualmente.
Adelante, María Paz.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen now so you can see. Just a minute. Let me know if you all can see.
We can see it.
There. Okay, excellent. Okay, so welcome everyone to my defense. And I'm so happy to have you here, and thank you very much. So the title of my study research is Challenges and Limitations in Teaching Students with Special Needs in an Inclusive Bilingual Classroom in a Private EFL Institution in Asunción, Paraguay. Okay, so before I start, I want to let you know that I chose this topic regarding the limitations teachers face daily in inclusive classroom is because I think this is an issue that is happening nowadays. And since the focus of our educational system in Paraguay is inclusion now, I thought that it was really, really interesting. So that's why I chose this topic. Now we can move on to the statement of the problem.
Sí.
Okay, so we know that inclusion is happening now, as I said. And the interest in this research topic is because it concerns about the professional challenges teachers are facing daily, right? So inclusion is about providing a healthy and safe environment that special needs students need to develop inside the inclusive classroom. And there are so many factors. I think that there are so many factors that somehow relating to the setting, sometimes, I mean, the environment or the teacher's training, sometimes it's not adequate. And we all know that teaching in an inclusive school is not an easy task, especially with poor knowledge and techniques and training. So teachers have an existing limitation while teaching in an inclusive bilingual classroom. And most teachers do not know how to handle or solve the difficult situations inside the classroom. So there is a research done by a researcher called Yaweria Aftab. He did this in 2015. And he said that the biggest limitation is this, lack of training. So because of the lack of training, educators question themselves if their teaching skills are appropriate in an inclusive bilingual classroom. So the issue relies on the fact that there is an increased need for teachers to be effectively prepared to work in inclusive classrooms. Now we're moving on to the purpose of the study. The main purpose is this: identify which challenges or difficulties English teachers might encounter while teaching students with special needs in an inclusive classroom from a range of students from 5 to 15 years old in a private bilingual school in Asunción, Paraguay. The specific objectives are four. Number one is determine what kind of improvement teachers should develop to achieve the goals of inclusion inside the bilingual classroom. Number two, identify the factors teachers consider when teaching in an inclusive environment to approach their students' different necessities. Number three, examine whether the training received in the educational institution contemplates inclusion. And number four, identify if the training courses responded to the needs and diversity in practice. Now, I'm going to show you the research questions. The main question is, what challenges and limitations might a teacher experience inside the bilingual inclusive classroom? And the sub-questions are three. What factors do teachers need to consider when addressing a special needs student? What do teachers need to improve bilingualism in inclusive classrooms? And number four, does the school administration give teachers different types of training to deal with special needs cases in the classroom? Now, let's go to the limitations of the study. The main limitation in this study is the fact that this is a simple case study, since this is happening in just one private institution. And of course, the uses of convenient sampling, since it hinders the ability to generalize the results of the survey to the population as a whole. This study will only apply to a specific population of educators in one English institute, so therefore the findings will not be generalized to other English institutes. Now, the ethical concerns. So the first ethical concern we have is getting informed consent from the school and the English coordinator of the teachers being studied through the surveys, and also ensure anonymity and the consent of the participants. So now let's start getting more in deep about the whole study. And I chose this quote that says, education is the most powerful tool to unify students with disabilities and those without them. Because I believe that we teachers have the power to create and change education from our places, from inside the classroom, right? So we need to understand what inclusion is. And inclusion, the international concept of inclusion, it isn't, I mean, nowadays is different from what it used to be in the past. So we need to understand all the process that went through the inclusion to understand how it's working in this year, in this century. So there is the importance of discerning between what is exclusion, segregation, integration, and inclusion. So the Committee on the Rights of People with Disability explains the differences between these words. Exclusion is when students are directly or indirectly prevented or denied access to education. This means that students are not allowed in the school and they don't want to teach these type of students. So that is exclusion. Then comes what is segregation or isolation. And segregation is when we give the students the possibility of getting access to education, but we make this separately from the students that doesn't have any disabilities. So this classroom or this curriculum or these methodologies are prepared to respond to the particular impairments of these students. So in the end, it's not inclusion, it's segregation or isolation, because we are not putting all the students together in one classroom and we are not making them socialize. So in the end, that is not inclusion. Then we have what is integration. It's more similar to inclusion, but it's not inclusion yet. And why? Because we gather all type of disabled students or disabled people in a regular educational institution. But the idea this institution have or teacher have is that these students need to reach to their level or to what they want to acquire in these students. So these students are not being included in the end because there's not adjustment. It's just we want them to reach the standards and standardized requirements that we want. So in the end, this is not inclusion. And the last one, this is inclusion, the meaning of inclusion, which is a process of systematic reform, embodying changes and modifications in content, teaching methods, approaches, structures, and strategies in education to overcome the barriers and provide all types of students with an equitable and participatory learning experience. So when we talk about inclusion, it's about everything. It's not about only the students or the teachers or these students receiving this type of education. It's about putting all inside one classroom and try to make it work, right? So this is inclusion. Now, I want to speak about, and I think this is really important, the national laws concerning inclusive education here in Paraguay. In 2013, the Paraguayan Constitution created this law, that's 5136, and on its first page of this law, it states that the main idea is to correspond the actions for the proper creation of an inclusive educational model inside the school system. The intention of the Ministry of Education was to create a model, an inclusive model that could work in all types of schools, from public to private institutions. That was the idea by creating this law. And as I read the law, I found really interesting that in the article number 4 of Principles and Guarantees assures that the educative system provides to special needs students the eradication of barriers in learning and participation by applying principles such as no discrimination inside and outside the institution. This means that the law respects the differences of every single student, and they recognize that those differences, and try to make a place where they feel comfortable and they feel safe. The main idea is to create schools where the environment is safe for those students. That's the main idea of this law, and particularly explains in this article. So equal opportunities and equal rights for everyone. Also, in this law, there is the function of the contemporary teacher. It's the statute of the teacher inside the inclusive classroom. So this section contemplates two main factors, which is the rights and the duties of the teachers. So first, we have the rights every teacher has while teaching an inclusive classroom, of course. First is continuous training in inclusive classroom, access to technical, pedagogical, and technological tools, accompaniment and support on the part of the family, the person in charge or the tutor, request for professional peer support inside the classroom, and support from a technical team. The technical team is a team created, and it was explained in this law, and was created to support the teachers inside the school. And it concerns the principal, the coordinators of each level, the pedagogists or psychologists, and that's it. And they create a technical team, and this technical team is in charge of bringing all the tools, all the resources, the workshops, conference, everything that the teachers need to achieve the goals of inclusion in the school. Then we have the duties. So the duties of a teacher inside the inclusive classroom. Number one is early identification of students with specific educational support needs. Number two, the precise support to the students from the moment of their schooling or the detections of their specific needs. Number 3, the timely application of reasonable accommodation to students with specific educational support needs so that they can achieve their general objectives. Number 4, the application of effective educational strategies. And number 5, the management of the diversity of groups according to their characteristics. Now, we're moving to the teaching strategies, which I think is really, really important because inclusion can only work if teachers have the appropriate methods and techniques to when try to teach in just special needs students. Okay, so we teachers are in charge of the learning process of our students, and if we don't know and we don't have the teaching skills or we don't have the techniques to approach that, we won't be success, right? I mean, we know that there are many difficulties while we try to do this. I'm not saying that there is no difficulties, but at least if we are prepared, we can know previously how to handle some situations. A teacher that is prepared and that is structured and organized will succeed more than a teacher who never had the techniques or never attend to a conference or workshop or understand what inclusion is. So teachers need to continuously seek answers about how to deal with the different type of students inside the classroom. So the first strategy is to provide emotional and academic support for students. I know that most of the conferences or workshops focus more on theoretical aspects of inclusion and about the what or how instead of the why, how to do it. And most teachers believe that when they are teaching this type of students, these students are getting a benefit from it, let's say. They don't think about the benefit we teachers are getting from teaching this type of students. So I think that teachers need to create a bond, need to connect with their students in order to achieve the academic part. Once you get to the emotional part, I think the emotional part comes first. You have to teach from the heart. You have to connect with your students. And once you get that, you can achieve all of the academic part. So that's one teaching strategy that I think is really important because we can learn about all of the techniques of how to achieve the academic part of the how to develop the second language acquisition, or the English. But if we don't connect to our students, we won't succeed in that. The other strategy is to cultivate an inclusive environment inside the inclusive classroom. So we have to create a classroom that nurtures every single student and where every single student feels valued and safe because of their differences. Not in spite of their difference, because of their differences. We need to teach to all of our students what inclusion means and how to work in inclusion inside the classroom. We should create a syllabus and we should create behavioral policies inside the classroom so we create this safe environment inside the classroom. And for example, when a student is feeling overwhelmed or frustrated, we need to have, for example, a corner inside the classroom where we can let them drain out all of their frustration, right? So cultivating an inclusive environment is one of the most important things for me as a teacher, and of course, working in an inclusive classroom. Now we're going moving forward to the methods part, and I'm going to explain a bit more about how I done this study. So the type of the study, I use a mixed method design since this is a case study and the sample was really, really small. So I chose to use both to give a more meaningful approach. The setting and participants, it was in a private bilingual school in Asunción, Paraguay, where English is used as a medium of learning. And the target population was composed of 9 English teachers staff at this school. The data collection. So the teachers receive a survey questionnaire. The survey questionnaire contains 16 close-ended questions and 4 open-ended questions. And then to gain a more in-depth knowledge of their thoughts and perceptions, we set structured interviews with 4 open-ended questions. All of the interview lasted between 25 and 30 minutes long, and all of them were audio recorded. The data analysis. I divide all of my data into 4 parts, and I'm going to show you next. But I'm going to explain you how I analyze each part. Part A was through Google's data storage in Excel spreadsheet. Part B, I used the Likert type scale. Part C, the Hotjar method. And part D, I used the transcription, coding process, and narrative report. So the study was divided into 4 sections: the survey and the interview. The survey contemplated part A, B, and C. Part A gathered the demographic data. Part B consisted of the 16 questions. And part C of the survey consisted of the open-ended questions. The interview analyzes all the data from the interviews, and it was used the narrative report and the coding process to analyze all of the data. So let's go to the result part. First, let's go with the survey questionnaires. And here we have a lot of graphs, so I want to explain you each one of them. So the part A is the demographic data. Graph number 1 is the gender of the participants. Male were 11%, female 89%. Graph 2 is the age range. Most of the participants were between 25 and 35 with a 45%. Then we have 20 to 25 with 22, and it's equal to 36 to 45, which is 22 as well. And then we have 46 to 55, which is 11%. Then we have graph number 3, which is the educational level of each of the participants. Undergraduate were 44%, bachelor's degree 33%, and master's degree 22%. Then we have graph number 4, which is the current teaching level they were teaching at the moment. So most of the teachers were teaching in the elementary, from the initial level up till primary, secondary, or so. No, elementary, primary, initial and primary. Then we have the secondary with a 30% and adult a 7%. And graphic number 5 is the training they received. I asked them if they have received training previously. All of them answered they did with an 89%, and only one person answered no with an 11%. Now we're moving forward to the part B, which is the close-ended questions. So before I go deep into this, I would like to explain how I organized this. There were 16 questions. What I used was the Likert scale type. And I create different categories for each question and their graph. Of course, I didn't put all of the questions here and all of the answers because it would be really, really long. So I choose 2, the most important, and I choose 2 for each variable, for each category. And I will try to explain a bit, so it won't be that long. So the first variable is students with special needs, and we have question number 1 and question number 8. Question number 1 was if they feel that children with special needs have the right to receive their education in the same classroom as typical developing children. Six teachers answered. The answers were from strongly agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. Strongly agree is green, agree is color yellow, disagree is color red, and strongly disagree is color blue. So 6 teachers answer with strongly agree, only 2 teachers answer with agree, and 1 teacher answer with disagree. The question number 8 was, students with special needs committed more disciplinary problems compared to the regular students. 8 teachers answered with disagree, and only 1 teacher answered with agree. Then we have the students in general variable. Here we have question number 4 and question number 5. So question number 4 is, I feel it is a valuable experience for all children to be educated in inclusive classroom. 6 teachers answer with they strongly agree, and 3 teachers answer with agree. Question number 5 is, I feel inclusion provides learning opportunities for children both with and without special needs. 5 teachers answer with strongly agree, 3 teachers answer with agree, and 1 teacher answer with disagree. Then we have the general teacher education training. And the question, this was only one question, and the question was, general education teachers have the training and skills to teach special needs students. 8 teachers answered with disagreement, and only 1 teacher answered that she agreed. Then we have general teacher education responsibilities variable. This was question number 11. General education teachers have the main responsibility toward the student with special needs placed in their inclusive classrooms. 4 teachers answered they strongly agreed, 3 teachers answered with agree, and 2 teachers answered they disagreed with the notion. Then we have the administrative super variable, which contemplates question number 13 and question number 14. Question number 13 is, the work climate created by the administration is conducive to effective inclusionary programs. 7 teachers answered they agree, and 2 teachers answered they strongly agree. Question number 14. The full participation of students with special needs is actively encouraged in our school. 5 teachers answered with agree, 3 teachers answered with strongly agree, and 1 teacher answered with disagree. And the last variable is the paraprofessional teacher presence. Question number 10. Paraprofessional teachers and general education teachers need to work together in order to teach students with special needs in inclusive classrooms. 5 teachers strongly agree with the notion, 4 teachers only agree with the notion. Question number 12. A paraprofessional's presence in the classroom could raise difficulties in determining who really is responsible for the special needs student. 1 teacher strongly disagrees, 6 teachers disagree, and 2 teachers agree with this notion. So now let's move forward to the part C, which is the open-ended questions. Here I use the Cordero method. I'm going to try to explain how this works. This was developed by Grenier, and he's the founder of a web business that use all the analytic tools and for qualitative and quantitative research. And I found out that this was really helpful for this type of analysis that I needed, which is the qualitative. And you put all of the answers inside this Excel spreadsheet, and you start categorizing the words that you find between all of the answers. If, for example, I found in this question number 1, teacher attention, and I start pointing out in those answers, and I start counting how many teachers use this word in their answers, since this is an open-ended question. So, the first question I asked them to get a more knowledge of what they think about inclusion was, what do you think is the biggest challenge with inclusion at your school? 3 teachers answered that the teacher attention, which means that teachers normally don't get to pay enough attention to special needs students because they're alone in the classroom, they don't have an aide. So that was one big challenge they found in this school. 3 teachers also answered professionals guidance. 2 teachers answered teachers preparation. 4 teachers answered student disabilities. And 3 teachers answered classroom setting and space. Here I put one answer from one teacher. I use a pseudonym for her. And she said, since teachers do not have teacher aides, it is challenging to pay close attention to all students simultaneously. Sometimes students with disabilities require our full attention. but most of the time this cannot be possible due to the attention the rest of the class demands. Question number 2 was, what are your feelings and thoughts about the inclusion of special needs students in the general educational classroom at your school? 7 teachers answered teacher support. They feel that the teacher support toward the students was what inclusion was the way the inclusion work inside the classroom. Three teachers answered that positive inclusive education. They create this, as I said, a safe space or inclusive environment by creating positive thoughts about inclusion, by teaching their students the positivism or of inclusion. Then 3 teachers answered that the school support was another thing that made inclusion work in this school. And also 2 teachers answered that non-disabled students support was also essential. When you see that your peers or your classmates are open to understand inclusion or to help their classmates with disability, is also a way in which inclusion can work inside the classroom. So one teacher said, I think it is great that our school can offer them the opportunity to learn at their own pace and style. This experience helps everybody. It gives us teachers the chance to grow professionally and emotionally. It also gives kids with no needs the chance to appreciate and value diversity. Question number 3 was, what are some resources available about inclusive education at your school to support the education of special needs students? 3 teachers answered was school materials, also the 3 teachers professional conferences and workshops, and technological resources. And 4 teachers answered school's infrastructure. And 1 teacher answered that she didn't know about the school resources. So this is another answer from one of the teachers. The school where I work is inclusive. It is constantly providing us with training on children with special needs, CEA, Braille, hearing problems, etc. The school building is adequate so that the students with special needs can move properly and feel integrated into all school activities. It has ramps, signs in Braille, QR with sign language videos, etc., etc. Question number 4 was, do you think that the paraprofessional teacher and the general education teacher should collaborate and work together to support special needs students inside the classroom? 8 teachers answered with yes. 4 teachers remarked that teamwork was necessary, good communication, and good collaboration. 2 teachers answered with sometimes, and 1 teacher didn't answer. Another answer from one of the teachers was that communication and collaboration between general and special education teachers are vital to the success of special needs students. General educators bring content and specialization, and special education teachers bring assessment and adaptation specializations. So now we move to the part D, which is the interviews. In the interview section, I used another 4 questions that were related to these 4 questions we just seen in the open-ended questions, because I wanted to understand more and more about why did they answer this, or what were their thoughts and feelings. So I put more in depth in the knowledge to understand the answers. So I also created coding, and I created 5 coding and 5 codes. Sorry, 5 codes to organize and structure the answers. So the first variable, the first category is challenges and limitations teacher experience inside the classroom. I asked them if after answering what is the biggest challenge of inclusion in their school, do they think that this school can call an inclusive one? Why yes or why not? So 5 out of 7 teachers answered that the school could be considered inclusive. 1 teacher said that I cannot say that my school is properly inclusive yet, but I can say that they are taking actions to get to that goal. All the teachers answered that the most significant limitation is the lack of training. The biggest challenge is teachers' training or qualifications to handle situations with inclusive students. Your preparation is essential in this field. And 3 out of 7 teachers answered that poor communication with family is another limitation. Sometimes teachers do not get the family support, and that is hard for us, the teachers. You are trying to deal with the special needs of these children, and parents are just not willing to help you. Another limitation that was commented and answered by one of the teachers, but I didn't put it here because only one teacher mentioned this, but I thought that it was really, really important. She said that inclusion happens because parents have the money to afford inclusion. It happens that inclusion really works in private institutions, as you can see it. And if the parents have the money to offer that type of education to their children, they will get that because it is a situation that public schools are not as private school working with inclusion. So she answered that because of the previous experience she had teaching in a public school, and now she's teaching in a private school which is inclusive. Then we have this category, which is factors to create an inclusive environment. I asked them what was the factors they thought or they think that is important in order to create an inclusive environment. So 4 teachers out of 7 agreed that only those teachers who work in an inclusive school will understand how to work with special needs students. In my experience working in an inclusive school and a non-inclusive school, teachers' attitudes differ from one another. Teachers who do not have the training or preparation in inclusion normally are not open to understand this. Since I experienced what it is like to be inside an inclusive classroom, my whole mindset changed to understand what inclusion means. 5 teachers mentioned that the most important factor was the values they teach to their students. We should educate students about what is happening in the classroom and about disabilities or difficulties their classmates might have. So they can be mindful about it as well. They can understand and they have to respect their peers. And teachers should not make any differences between students. Another factor to create an inclusive environment that 2 teachers mentioned is the concern about the school administrators not paying enough attention to teachers' mental health. Sometimes the challenge we, the teachers, face daily are overwhelming. We tend to feel like the challenges are superior to what we can do, and you feel like you are not doing enough. And I don't think that is the reality. I believe teachers need to have that extra support from the school administration to achieve the goals that they are requiring you. In the end, it is not only about the students, but the teachers and how they face those struggles daily. Then we have the improvements that should be done to achieve the goals of inclusion. I asked them how will they do to achieve the goals in inclusion while simultaneously achieve the goals of bilingualism inside the classroom. So 7 teachers agreed that having paraprofessionals inside the classroom was vital for the development of the special needs students. We depend on each other on this to work it out. It is vital to work with paraprofessional teachers inside the classroom. 5 out of the 7 teachers answered that there should be more focus on the emotional support for students. I think inclusive bilingual. I think. I think your microphone is on, Mr. Christopher.
You need to wrap it up, Maria Paz.
Okay. Okay. I will. Okay. So 5 out of the 7 teachers answered that there will be more focus on the emotional support for students. And 5 teachers mentioned that changing the school curriculum to make it more bilingual was crucial. School administration support for teachers. 4 out of the 7 teachers say that they received tremendous support from the school administrators. And they say that they received the help from the school administration and that the school staff participate in conference and then bring back the information to the teachers. And also they say that they need more support because sometimes it happens that the support is not enough. I also asked them if there were other suggestions on the research topic. All interviewees agreed that understanding teachers' limitation in the inclusive classroom is really important. Two teachers say that teachers need to have a vocation and passion for teaching, and one teacher stated that this school trained their teachers to connect with their students. Now the conclusion. So, what factors do teachers need to consider when addressing a special needs student? The most important factor all teachers agree on was to create was the teacher's perspective towards inclusion. If the teacher is open to be an inclusive one, that will work out in an inclusive environment. So it relies also in the previous experiences the teachers have while teaching an inclusive and in a non-inclusive environment. Also is about the emotional support for students and teachers as well. Then we have the other sub question that was, what do teachers need to improve in bilingualism in inclusive classroom? Despite the fact they work with paraprofessionals, what matters the most is to improve the school's curriculum to a second language acquisition. They say that bilingualism wasn't there yet because they weren't working with this type of program. They were still working with as a foreign language. So that was a way to improve bilingualism inside the inclusive classroom, alongside by working with paraprofessionals. And again, they mentioned the importance of the emotional support. Then the next question is, does the school administration give teachers different types of training to deal with special need cases in the classroom? Most teachers say that they receive their support from the administrators, but other teachers say that they didn't receive enough. This means that the coordinators may not be well trained to answer or help the teachers because it didn't happen to all the teachers. Only a few felt that they were receiving that support. And the main question, what challenges and limitations might a teacher experience inside the bilingual inclusive classroom? So, according to this teacher's perception, the main challenge inside the classroom is that there are still many barriers in the field of inclusive classroom. Their lack of training, their lack of techniques, and still the country's inclusive system provided to teachers is not enough. We need to work more on inclusion. We need to understand more what inclusion is, and that is the biggest challenge. The other limitation is also that inclusion can work it out when parents have the money to afford inclusion and they can put their children inside private institutions who work as an inclusive institution. So in the fact that this school gives this teacher all of the tools, it is not enough yet. So, nevertheless, what can be drawn from this case study is that the willingness of these teachers' attitude is what makes inclusion possible in this particular situation in this private institution. They want to be inclusive and they want to work with these children and their specific educational needs. So the implications. Most participants display positive perceptions towards inclusion and regard for working with special needs students. The importance of receiving proper training to effectively teach students with special needs. Teaching is about vocation and passion for education, and the emotional part displays an important role in order to develop excellent teaching skills. And my recommendations is additional research should be performed about inclusive education, since this field research I think is really, really important, and we are just getting started on what inclusion is, at least here in our country. And I found really, really interesting. I think this field has a lot more to teach us. The training received and experience acquired for inclusive education by teachers of any kind could be analyzed to get a clearer picture of the situation in Paraguay and include realistic workshops on inclusion and bilingualism during these teachers' professional development. It is also highly recommended. And I want to end this his defense with this comment that one of my coworkers said, and she said, "Inclusion is happening now. Kids with learning disabilities are more and more nowadays. We should become 2022 teachers, which means being prepared to deal with all type of students inside the classroom. Be prepared, trained, and ready to love your students above all. That is our duty, and we need to understand that." And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Maria Paz, for the enriching presentation and the relevant topic up to date. And it's definitely a topic which needs constant revision and monitoring. So well done on that. Okay, so let's start with questions. Carolina, the mic is all
Yeah,
yours.
I have many questions, but I can maybe stress on. Well, I have questions about the answers of some of the teachers were very contradictory at some points. I don't know if you realized it, because there were teachers that highly supported administration, and maybe one teacher was highly aware of all the facilities that that institution was providing them with, and there were other teachers that did not see all the effort that the administration or the curriculum academic instructors made in that institution, in that particular institution. So that called my attention. There were people who were aware of it, and there were people who were still waiting for something to happen, right?
Mhm.
And so that's something that called my attention. I wonder, Paz, did you yourself make any inclusive training? And in this time that you did these studies, that you interviewed teachers, did you think about, reflect on that, and did you go and take any courses?
I did. During the pandemics, I took many courses. I mean, I weren't working in a on-site school at the moment. I was working virtually, but I took a lot of conferences, especially those with the Paratiso, and I took another ones with Kansas in Comité Kansas. I don't remember well the name. So yes, and I was aware of the fact that some of the teachers, but I guess it was more like they didn't like how the school were. They weren't happy or something or satisfied. But I think that when most teachers answered that they were aware that the school was in progress or in process of being an inclusive one, I think that that is the reality, because most teachers answered that the school was in process of becoming an inclusive one, and there were least teachers who answered they did not. But I don't think that was the reality. So I think, since, and I know personally this institution, and this institution, for example, has braille signs all around the walls and the hallways, so deaf learners can enter the classroom. So they are in progress. They are doing things to become more inclusive. So yes,
Great.
that's what I think.
That's fantastic. And many teachers were undergraduate too.
Yes, many teachers were undergraduate.
So
Only a few have, yes, bachelor's
that,
degree, and two of them had master degree.
so that's another also factor, right?
Yes, another factor.
It's an interesting topic to discuss many hours. Yeah. Well, that's my comment. I have many questions, but maybe Professor Nunez is interested in asking a question as well.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Maria Paz, for this presentation. My question for you is a more methodological one and perhaps a bit hypothetical. Whenever we are done, a researcher is analyzing and we are done with our questions and our, we are reviewing the responses of our subjects of study, we sometimes wonder, I should have asked them this, or
Mhm.
I wish I had asked them this or that. Did that occur to you? And if it did, what question was left there pending for you? Or
It did occur me. Yes, it did. And it was when I was talking to I mean, these teachers that they weren't happy with how things were working out in this school, and I didn't get the chance to go deep with why they weren't feeling satisfied with what the school were given to them, because I know this school and this school is really inclusive. I mean, I became an inclusive teacher because of this school, because I learned a lot of in this school, and I didn't have this mindset before I started working there, because my experience there was I had a blind learner, and for me it was really challenging, and I wasn't aware. So yes, and all of the answers this teacher gave me were really, how do you say, like, they weren't, I didn't feel she was happy, but I don't think that this was personal to the school. This was another issue. I don't know, maybe my thoughts were, I will my when I was transcribing all of the answers, I was wondering, why did she feel this? Because all of the other teachers say, no, yes, we received the administration super, our coordinator is great, and we have all of the tools. So yes, that happened to me specifically with those, because when I was doing the categorization stuff, most answers were like this and only one answer in every single category. So yes, that happened to me.
Thank you.
Okay, Maria Paz. So, I would have to agree with what Professor Carolina mentioned regarding the points of certain contradictions in some answers between teachers. And one of those contradictions that I identified had to do with the answers. Regarding that, on one hand, they emphasize the importance of the teacher's perspective towards inclusivity, and on another hand, they emphasized that private schools had better inclusion ways, let's say. So, what would be your final point on that? On this debate, let's say, if you had to say, okay, we need the tools, we need the infrastructure, or would you emphasize the role of the teacher's perspective and the emotional component as key to inclusion?
I think that both of them are connected, but I personally believe that teachers who are willing to understand what inclusion is and they want to teach from their heart is the ones who will succeed. Because you have, as I said, this case where she didn't feel satisfied, and she is not feeling satisfied, but she's having all of the tools, all of the resources, all of the materials available there. You have everything there, but you are not feeling satisfied with what you're having, is because you are not being that open-minded with the situation or with the opportunities you're having in front of you. So I personally believe that teachers who want to teach from their hearts are the ones who are going to succeed. And in my experience, in my personal experience, I fell in love with education. I fell in love with being a teacher. I didn't want this. I wasn't looking for this, but I fell in love with it. And once I get more and more involved in teaching, I realize how much I love inclusion as well. Because I believe that inclusion is for every single one. I think every single one has a capacity and an ability in each area. So I think that that's what matters the most: your intention and your vocation and your passion, of course.
Yeah.
Right. Agreed, Maria Paz. And don't forget that that is one specific characteristic of Paraguayan teachers. The creativity,
Yes.
the flexibility. I have met teachers of public schools that are really interested in their students and sometimes do way more than teachers that have all the infrastructure, as you said.
Yes.
So don't forget about this key component, Maria Paz. Thank you for sharing your answer. Okay,
Okay.
so I think that, yeah, she got the message.
Super.
Prof, do you start or do I start?
You start.
Okay.
Ahí está la mamá, bienvenida.
Okay, good evening, Maria Paz. Okay.
Hello.
So, hello. So we took our
I can
time.
hear you.
Oh,
Yes,
can you hear me now?
we can hear you.
Yes, now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So, Maria Paz, we took our time in debating and going over all the items that we were required to evaluate. And regarding your written presentation, there isn't any doubt at all. It was an outstanding written presentation. I think we were all satisfied with the level of research that carried out. So we were very happy with that. Regarding the oral defense, is where we evaluated a few items and we were worried about certain aspects. So in your written defense, you've got a 5. In the oral defense, our worries were the following. First of all, the time management issues. Basically, the time was basically doubled in regards to the time limitation set for the defense. Usually that is a requirement. It is difficult to do so, to sum up so much information, but it's something that we do have to practice when delivering these topics. Okay. Your knowledge of topic was clear. Okay. We were very proud of that. There was no doubt in that aspect at all. And another aspect that was debated and that did leave us questioning was a few technical language issues regarding pronunciation and grammar issues, which Mr. Christoffel is going to specify as our specialized linguist. Okay. But all in all, before Mr. Christoffel gives you the specific issues regarding that, we had a total of an average of 3.6 in the oral defense, which carried on with basically was rounded up to 4. So it would be a 5 plus 4, leaving you with a 5. So congratulations,
Thank you.
Licenciada Maria Paz, on that. But we did feel in the need to specify those issues just to help you out in the future. So Mr. Christoffel, please take it away.
Yes, I'll share with you a list of points that we would like you to work on, Maria Paz. Okay. Now I need to finish in Spanish, and then we can keep talking. Okay.
Okay.
Muy bien, señoras y señores, esta ha sido la disertación de María Paz Cordero con un tema muy especial. Ella contestó apropiadamente las preguntas del comité evaluador. Estamos muy orgullosos de ella y la felicitamos. Tenemos a la flamante licenciada María Paz Cordero. Muchas felicidades.
Thank you.